Hey there, welcome to episode number 70 of the Dodgeball Marketing Podcast. Michael, I'm looking at myself in the mirror and I do need a haircut.
No, you're all right.
So for people that are on audio, you don't get to see my Jason Sudeikis mane. I wish, right? So that's what we're going to talk about today, my hair. We're going to talk about webinars, getting the most SEO value out of your webinar content.
Yes.
So a lot of people, Michael, do, especially B2B companies, will do webinars to attract people, gather leads, so forth. And they might not be thinking about the value, the SEO value out of the webinar. They might just be thinking about
missed opportunity.
So we're going to talk about some ways that you can deploy a webinar, which is a piece of content.
Yes.
For SEO.
Yes. Shout out Chris Kleinfelter, Chris Rains. Your hair is looking very Jason Sudeikis. So.
It is very well. I wish.
Yeah.
It's a sore spot, Mike.
So this is something that I'm really excited about because one of the things that we do a lot of is planning content strategies, and I call it the French kitchen. Nothing gets wasted. Like you got a little bit of this, and no leftovers. I think a lot of people who are, especially in healthcare, I see a lot of planned effort, time, and expense to produce webinars, but then there's very little thought given to the massive amount of use of that webinar and other channels after it's produced. I think there's that sort of sugar high of how many people registered for the webinar, how many leads did we get? Did we get the list over to the sales team? Did they follow up and introduce themselves quickly after the webinar? How many appointments did they get booked? Well, there's a whole second wave of that recorded content that is usually really good, rich thought leader content that just gets totally overlooked. And so number one is think of your landing page for the webinar as an SEO page. Often it's just a really perfunctory title, 2 sentences, and a form or a registration button that takes you somewhere else. Well, go ahead and tease out the content of the webinar that people can expect. You're going to get a lot of good keyword-rich content by having not just 2 sentences or just the name of the event on some kind of registration platform, but go ahead and have a landing page on your site where you get at least a full paragraph or 2 of what's going to be covered, and then get into some of the questions that are going to be answered, and don't answer them. Just cover, like, we're going to discuss this. We're going to discuss this. We're going to, we're going to go from wondering about this to understanding this. We're going to go from being curious about this to having a framework for thinking about this.
Yeah.
And then the bio. Who are the speakers, the participants? Get some of their information with their permission, leverage them to produce some content, because this landing page, it can go up and then it can evolve after the webinar goes through its stages: before recording, gated content, ungated content. And so this landing page is essentially a foundational piece of your long-term strategy for webinar content. That's number one, use the landing page.
Awesome. I love that. Number 2, load the webinar with the full transcript up to your YouTube page. Now, quick caveat here, you might want to, after the webinar is done, you might want to continue to have it gated with an email. So your immediate post-webinar experience might be, like Michael said.
Yeah, like for 3 months or 6 months.
SEO optimize your page and continue to get those emails because it's gated behind the email. After a certain time, it might age out and say, like, we're not really getting a lot of leads from this anymore.
Yeah.
So let's release it for free out to the public.
And this is a good strategy for all gated content: ebooks, white papers, webinars, anything. Have it gated, have a period of time, and have kind of your own freshness meter for your industry, what you're doing, and then expose it to search indexes.
Yeah, awesome. And so load that with the full transcript up to YouTube. You can go to rev.com to get a transcript of your video that you can bake into it when you upload it. Then that becomes yet another hook content in video format that you can get that content on the world. And then for bonus points, you can have a video editor clip out different segments of it that are pertinent, upload those as separate clips. And then there's, even more hooks in the water for the YouTube video search side.
You can build all those clips for that webinar into a playlist, and that playlist creates another set of URLs for your content.
Yep, and then link all those back to your website, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But after a certain period, when you're comfortable just giving it away for free, when you've felt you've got all the leads that you're going to get from your webinar, straight to YouTube.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. All on YouTube and exposed and part of your branded material. Next up, this is related to the previous segment. Make the full transcript available on the webpage on your website with the video so the content can be indexed. So you may have an automated transcript on YouTube that you clean up. You may have a rev.com transcript that you generate and load to YouTube. Well, you can also use that transcript on your own webpage. And the format that I like to use for a landing page, a long-term landing page for a webinar, is to use and keep most of the landing page content in place, but maybe review it for case instead of saying something like the upcoming event webinar, or, the webinar that we're going to have on Thursday. Make sure you're editing that so that it's not unclear, and then embed that video content right on the page from YouTube. So that, or you can use Vimeo on the landing page if you need to tighten up your customer experience. But having that embedded video above the fold, if possible, or pretty close, lets people not struggle to get to the video itself. And then below that, where people haven't missed the fact that the video is there, the full text transcript of the entire segment. And if you do that, you can add a little bit of value to that transcript after it's been loaded. The wall of text is not bad for search indexes, but if you want to make it a little bit more readable, a little bit more scannable, and better for SEO, because this is an episode about SEO benefit, go through and break it up with some subheaders. If you go through and think about that wall of text being a little bit more like a web page or formatted a little bit more like a blog post, you can go in and build some keyword-rich subheaders. And a lot of webinars have they lend themselves to this. They have a really strong orientation toward a Q&A format anyway. Mm-hmm. And so you can go through and you can structure subheaders that are going to naturally hit keyword-rich topics. And so that's a little bit of editorial work that you can do after the fact. Gosh, I don't think we can understate the value of breaking up a transcript with subheaders. I would say it might add 50% to 100% more value. Yeah, and it makes loading the transcript. Search engines are looking at the title of the page, the H1, and they're also looking at those H2s and saying, does this all tie together? Is this a coherent page?
Yeah, and the people looking at the page don't want to see a giant wall of text either. People
That's
scan
right.
people as a general rule. People scan web pages. They do not read web pages. They scan them.
That's right.
So they have whatever's on their mind, and they're just going to go look for headers to see what connects with what's on their mind, and they might read 10% of your page. So if you want it to be the right 10% and really capture them instead of having them bounce like, I'm not going to read this whole page. Yeah, that's the best way to do it.
Yeah. In SEO, we're always kind of building on the best idea or the building on the situation. So you have this transcript, you load it. Oh, that's good. Now we're speaking to search engines. Well, then we can pivot from there with subheaders and breaking up the content visually. Oh, now we're speaking to people. And you can also add other things. One thing I would recommend, if you're ever stuck on how to format a wall of text into something more readable, pick up an old school print magazine if you have anything around, even if it's something that like you get from your university or a nonprofit, and just flip through the pages and look for the way they structure call outs and little boxes, little pull quotes, call outs, photo with a caption underneath. That image can reinforce the story that's being told in the content. Stats and infographics that you have in other content that's relevant can be pulled in and teased. And so look at some old school magazine publishing to see all the different ways that you can take a long form piece of text and break it up visually. Mm-hmm. And if you really want to get into it, you can even do things like take a little thing that's mentioned, make it a resource item, and break it out and build other pages with it if you need to. Mm-hmm. But yeah, there are lots of ways to take a transcript and load it to a landing page and make it really valuable.
Yeah, cool. All right, number 4 here, getting the most SEO value out of your webinar content. Build links that point to the webinar content from some of your older pages. So this is a really good way to kind of piggyback off of some other pages that you have that are older, maybe list higher on already get a good amount of traffic.
Yeah.
Maybe they're thematically linked to what the topic of the webinar is, right?
Yep.
So you go back to those old pages, maybe you put in a sentence or a little call out that says, if you want to go deeper into this, we covered this in the last half of our recent webinar. Click here to learn more about the webinar, and then that takes them to the page. So you're sort of piggybacking off of all the other pieces of content that you have that are related and pointing them back to the newest, most relevant thing. So I really like this one, Michael. It's a good idea to.
And that has sorry, step on you. That has another benefit. When you do that, when you go and you make that small tweak to those older pages, that registers with search engines that page has been updated.
Right.
So it's yet another freshness cycle for that page, that source of the link.
And correct me if I'm wrong here, but the internal linking that you have, so if you say point 4 or 5 different pages that are already ranking to your new page, that's also a signal to Google that you think that page is important. So they will think that page is more important. All things being equal, like the Google will rank that page possibly higher.
Yep.
Because of the internal linking.
That's right. Yeah. We often overlook and undervalue links that we can create, but in the literature, a lot of people argue that those links seem to be about as valuable as external links. And I'm just referring to people who know a lot more about search engine optimization than me, but that's a pretty common theme, is don't forget the pages that you do control on the internet as a source of links. And so we call that a tent pole strategy. So when you have a webinar or a services page, it's kind of a big deal. Like, there's a lot of money involved in producing something like a webinar. You really want to eke out every bit of value you can.
And a lot of companies will put a little notification bar in the header, just so no matter where people are on the website, they'll see that this is the biggest thing going on right now. And
that's a great idea. Yeah, we should have added that as a segment.
That would be that's just an extra. If it's so important,
bar promotion of a new webinar.
Of course, that would go away after the webinar is over. Probably
maybe after it's not fresh. Yeah.
But then your post strategy could maybe be this tentpole strategy of taking some of your more popular pages and linking them back. So that's more less intrusive. And more.
But even promoting the webinar when it's upcoming to keep your landing page. And that would be an argument for maybe keeping the same URL for the landing page before, during, and after the gating of the content. Yeah. Let's see. So last segment for this episode, I'll take this one, Chris. Use keyword research to develop your topic, page title, subheaders, and your links to the webinar page on your site. So when we're developing all of the different touch points and the content itself, it's good SEO. It's better for SEO if we're using terms and keywords that better align with what people are putting into search indexes. An example of this is you may have a webinar topic that's meant to be intriguing or to incite some curiosity, and it could be a little bit abstract. Or the example I've used for years is, a day I'll never forget. Well, that doesn't tell me anything about like what really happened. That's like this vague, cryptic thing. And it's actually important when speaking to search indexes to say something that is the search term that someone would use. So you need to be painfully direct in what the content's about. Yep. And a lot of people struggle with that creatively. It doesn't have that pizzazz or that feeling of being special. Mm-hmm. And so you've got to kind of negotiate this. We always say don't ever do SEO at the expense of readability, but I would say meet it halfway. Try to find a way to be creative.
Don't ignore the robots.
Yeah, don't ignore the robots. Don't try to keep the robots from finding what you're putting out there. But also remember you're talking to humans. So I don't have like a corrected version of that example, but that's based on I worked in publishing before I was really just doing internet marketing 20 years ago, and authors have horrible ideas for titles for their own books. Never let an author title their own book. It's always a bad idea. It's always something like A Day I'll Never Forget. And it's like, man, If you want something that
You better have a
nobody-
strong subtitle.
yeah. If you want something nobody cares about, let the author title their book. SEO is the same way. You got to remember you're talking to both humans and search indexes. And so you got to use keyword research and use the titles. And so all those touch points, it's not just the title, it's also the subheaders. And then we talked in the previous segment about building links on other pages. You don't want to link click here or read more. You want to link something like see the full webinar : topic to let search indexes know, oh, the target page is about this subject matter.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's great.
All right. I think you took us in.
That's
Take
it.
us
Yeah.
out.
I really like this topic, Michael, and I'll take
Yeah.
us out in a minute, but this is kind of what people think of webinar as like hunting.
Oh,
You're
yeah.
going to go out and find leads, like drive paid traffic to it, but it can be hunting and farming.
Brilliant. Yes.
Hunt it first, and then it becomes a farm where you can organically, without driving a bunch of paid traffic to it. So
yeah,
I really
webinars are and long form content are the domesticated cattle of SEO.
right.
Yeah.
All right, cool. All right. Please find more at Facebook, Twitter. We're on YouTube. If you're watching this on YouTube, we're on LinkedIn to find more episodes and more clips. We're 70 episodes in, so we got a whole catalog you can browse of all different kind of marketing topics. So just dive into those and binge watch, please, or binge listen.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks,
All right.
everybody.